Dry January.
Village owns from 2 years.
I'm gonna try and break the same number I back to my
I'm $8. No, we bought these. We bought it.
Not wrestling.
Oh, I turned it off. Half of what
Okay, I'll call to order the regular meeting of Monday, January the 6th, 2025 to order. Certainly. I have all, I ask all who have not signed in, please do so. Please turn off all cell phones and other electronic devices. And please conduct any private conversation in the hallway or outside. Emergency exits can be found on your right and to your left. This meeting is also live streamed via YouTube with text commenting available. And if you'd please join the town board in a salute to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you for your attendance here this evening. A couple of announcements. All town departments will be closed on Monday, January the 20th for Martin Luther King Day. To the board members and to the public, there are 2 benches that have been delivered, and they have been secured by the Parks Department in the Veterans Memorial Garden. Brian Emelson has notified the family of Bill Stelling that the memorial bench in Bill's name has been placed there. And on this evening's agenda, resolutions 1, 2, and 3. I am pulling them from this evening's agenda and hoping to have them back on our agenda for our next meeting. So that's all I have, and at this point, we'll ask the clerk to read the public hearing notice.
Please take notice that a public hearing shall be held on January 6, 2025 at 7 p.m. at the Victor Town Hall, 85 East Main Street, Victor, New York, to consider an application from Auburn Trail Properties, LLC, requesting a rezoning of 14.2 plus acres of property located on the east side of Victor Heights Parkway, north of Route 251, which is located within the town's Route 96 251 overlay district, from a light industrial district to a PDD planned development district. Written comments may also be directed to the Victor Town Clerk on or before noon on January 6th. And the meeting is live streamed, as you know, and this was put in the paper on December 20th, 2024.
Very good. Thank you, Karen. Mr. Goldman.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, members of the board. For the record, my name is Jerry Goldman. I'm the attorney and agent for Auburn Trail Properties and DeFelice Development, and the principals are here this evening. Mark DeFelice is on the far end, and closer to the middle is Frank DeFelice. In addition, with us this evening are Jim Fahey, who is the project engineer in the front row, and Matt Tomlinson, who is in the second row, who is the project engineer from Marathon Engineering. We're here this evening for a public hearing on a matter where we have been before this board and in front of many boards on a number of occasions. This is the first time that I was actually actively involved in appearing before this board was in April of last year now. And at that time, we had a pretty thorough presentation as part of our privilege of the floor. But this site has been under consideration since 2021 as a potential site for residential development. The proposal is shown on the overhead. It's located on the east side of Victor Heights Parkway, the eastern end of it, across the street from FLCC that has their Victor campus just to the opposite side of the road. As was pointed out, the property is currently zoned light industrial, and we are proposing to rezone to a PDD, similar to the rezoning that occurred for the High Point development recently by this board. The proposal is for ultimately for construction of 3 4-story buildings that would have 52 units each, located strategically so that it is visible from the Lehigh Trail, but at the same time is not extremely obtrusive. We have, as you may recall, discussed this matter with the Victor Hiking Trails people, who viewed it with favor. The site overall is a 14-acre site, and we are proposing a density of 11.1 units per acre on the site, with the 4-story buildings, 52 units per building, which are very important for our ability to make this project work from a financial point of view. The density of 11.1 units per acre is a normal type of density for apartment and apartment type development. The interest in apartments, well, first of all, the interest in moving away from light industrial is the fact that there hasn't been much of a market for light industrial development. However, at the same time, there's been substantial interest in having an increase in the residential housing stock. In particular, Ontario County did a housing study and determined that the sub-area, which includes Victor and Farmington, can utilize some additional units. The occupancy is well over 90% right now within those areas. In addition, our rezoning is supported by the Town Comprehensive Plan in a number of areas. In particular, Chapter 8 talks about higher density residential in commercial and industrial corridors. Also, we have walkability. We just aren't that far from the village. It's a very nice type of situation. We are proposing connections to the Lehigh Trail, and we think that this project is one which is worthy of approval and development. Since we were here informally, if you will, at the privilege of the floor in April, we filed a formal petition for rezoning. We've gone through the paces which are required under the town code and under state law. We have gone to Ontario County Planning that has recommended approval. We had review by the planning board, who looked with favor upon the rezoning of the property. As part of our application, we are required under the town code to provide a draft PDD code section, and we have done that as part of our package along the lines of what the town board approved, again, for the Highline project. So to that extent, we think that we are consistent. We're defining some elements of it that are important to our development, dealing with the building height and the number of units, and we think that we are at a point where we feel comfortable that this matter can proceed forward with the town's approval to allow us to get through this step and then go and finalize the site plan approval with the planning board. I don't know if there's anyone in our group that has anything to add to that. With that, we'd be glad to answer any questions that the board may have.
Jerry, I have no questions for you, but I'll certainly defer to any of the board members if they have questions.
Have you contacted utilities to see if you'd be able to get the proper utilities to service the site?
You've been reading today's paper, is that part of the issue? There's some issue with electricity, which I don't think is going to be a problem
I think maybe
here.
a little more than some.
Yeah, well, for those projects in Henrietta, we have an issue. When it comes to utilities, you've given me the opportunity to introduce Matt and to have him stand up and talk a little bit about the engineering work that's been done to date relative to the site.
Yeah, thanks. Matt Tomlinson with Marathon. As Jerry mentioned, we're the project engineer on it. We've explored capacity of utilities as far as sanitary, sewer, water, all of those things. Gas and electric preliminary coordination's been had, but until we start designing building systems, there's a question as to which side of the threshold this will fall, either all electric for housing, which may be a requirement, or being able to have gas in there. So we've had preliminary conversations with them with no indication of an issue. But until we pick the actual building systems and get into that design, we won't have final confirmation of that.
So you've had discussions with the utilities in regards to electric and,
We've had initial,
Gas?
to request the will serve letters from them based on our best estimates.
okay, because we've had projects, I know, in our neighboring town of Farmington, as well as one here in Victor, that have been either pulled off the table or delayed because of utility restrictions purely for electric and gas. So would that, you see, be a delay in the project?
I suppose in theory it's possible. Again, we don't have that level of detail until we really get into the site plan design and building design of the piece. But
Okay, and
yeah.
would you, have a lot of the times it's, they will be able to do the capacity upgrade, but it's at quite a significant cost to the developer? Is that something that you all are prepared for?
That would have to be evaluated depending on what the cost is that's provided.
Okay. I would just be more comfortable, I guess, as a board before we go approving it, so that we don't have a project just sitting there, knowing that there's either like the financial capability for the developer to pay for the upgrade, or I know that the utilities will not give a certainty, yes, no, I know it's not something they provide on a purely kind of preliminary basis, but something that we know this isn't going to get approved and then sit there for 5-6 years because we don't have proper utilities.
The challenge from the development side is there's a significant effort and cost to developers to get to a point in design where a utility company will provide that information or that certainty of service. They are in that same catch-22 a lot of times
Yeah.
in that they'll say, sure, we have capacity, but then something gets delayed and another project will come online that may take some of that capacity. And so respectfully, there's not a very clear and clean path to being entirely certain that that will be available because of that dependency on timeline, other people's projects and things outside of both the utilities control as well as the developers.
We can't really get a reservation, if you will, and
Yeah.
say, if your project gets delayed, we're going to assure that we're going to serve. Now, understand also at this point, all that we're doing is dealing with the underlying zoning. We don't have a project yet until we complete the rest
Yep.
of the town process. So this is really a first step relative to that. And if it becomes apparent that it's not going to happen, then that's something that we'll be reporting back to the town relative to it. And if there's a need for us to retool in some sort of fashion, we could come and readdress that. But we can't even get to discuss that point, as Matt pointed out, until we get into further design. We can't really get into further design until we know we're properly zoned. So those are the
I think
steps
just,
in
I guess from
sequence.
the town perspective, it's,
Yeah.
we rezone and then, there's no project to be had because there's no utilities, and then we have to figure out what we do with this parcel we've just rezoned. So I understand it. You're right, it's a catch-22.
It's a catch-22.
Just a follow-up question on, section actually on the letter that the planning board provided regarding our incentive zoning and the typically, the offsetting reduction in density somewhere else in the community, or a payment to the town in lieu thereof, a sum to be determined by the board to be equivalent to the cost of the reduction in residential density or payment for infrastructure improvements, et cetera. Is that something that you either have thought about or that is getting proposed in the PDD? Because it just seemed right now like purely rezoning so that you can even put this project where it's really not allowed right now.
Yeah, it's not part of our current proposal to deal with that. We didn't come in as an incentive zoning project. We came in what I guess we refer to as old school in terms of coming to this board purely for the PD, the PD approval. So, you know, to that extent, certainly, if there are infrastructure needs which tie into our project, we would be up for dealing with that, and certainly that will become apparent as part of the site plan process, but we aren't really seeking any incentive zoning relative to this. We think on its own merit, right now, the lack of light industrial, the lack of light industrial demand, the demand is set forth in the Ontario County Housing Study, that on its own merit, this rezoning would stand without the need for incentives.
Okay, but if there was to be, you know, a request from the town for, you know, a sum of, a payment and some for infrastructure improvements, whether we need to make that to, you know, an increase in traffic on our roads, like you said, sewer or water, emergency services, et cetera, would that be something that you'd be open to discussing during the PDD? Or you're saying you would only want to discuss that during a site plan after we approve PDD?
The site plan, during the site plan approval, we would be talking about infrastructure improvements that would be somewhat related to the project.
Yep.
As you may want to refer to your attorney, the impact, quote-unquote, impact fees for transportation is not something which is authorized under New York State law. So to that extent, we can't really have a pure impact fee directly dealing with traffic. So there's a little bit of a line there relative to whether we're seeking the incentive zoning process, which is not the route that we are headed toward. We're just going for a straight rezoning at the site.
Okay, and then the other thing that I know we had brought up in discussion in the past was the school enrollment. And as we all saw at the vote come this past October, their needs have greatly increased for space. They, you know, they're putting teachers in closets pretty much, doubling up, et cetera. But this would create an increase in student enrollment, but you seem to think before, no, it wouldn't. Have you changed your mind on that?
Yeah, no, as a practical matter, when we take a look at the units, and I don't recall the unit mix, so we have primarily ones and twos? You may want to step up for the record, Jim.
Microphone, yes.
Good evening, Jim Fahey from Fahey Design Associates. The breakdown of units is there's 12 one-bedroom, one-bath units, 38 two-bedroom, two-bath units, and 2 3-bedroom, 2-bath units in each of the 3 buildings.
Do you have a restriction on the number of people that are an occupancy on each unit?
No,
Can't do that, but if you have.
Do you have an age restriction you're proposing?
No.
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 Not
So then,
proposing.
yes, there would be an impact to the school that you can presumably guess.
Again, you're talking about a total of, I think if I heard you correctly, 6 3-bedroom units throughout the entire project? You said 2 in each building?
Right.
Okay. When you get down to 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom units, you generally are not talking about a whole lot of kids coming out of that. I think that the market would indicate that we would probably be looking at more empty nesters than we would be families.
I think that's historically across the board on all the multifamily projects that we're designing, which are numerous across the Monroe County area, is in Ontario County. It's the empty nester, active seniors, and there's an awful lot of young professionals, but not a large number of families. To say that there would be no families at all moving in, there are no restrictions on that, but my experience is it would be very, very minimal.
Okay. I would just say, at least in our town and for our school district, I guess I would disagree. I've passed, you know, I live here every day, commute every day from the town. I had to stop behind, if I don't leave on time, I stop behind an apartment complex that picks up 35 kids. And another one that picks up 12, and they are kind of the same mix of apartments. lived in a house previous to this that was 2 bedrooms in which a family raised 4 kids there. So, not to say that it's not being done, I think it is. So I do think there would be an impact to the school that would want to be discussed at least with the school. And then my last question would be, are you going to be seeking a pilot for the program from the IDA?
I have not discussed that with the owners and developers at this point. I haven't heard any discussion of that. And although it won't be in the record because it hasn't been verbalized, I see a lot of head shaking no in the front row from Mr. and Mr. DeFelice.
Okay, those are my only questions.
Any other questions, board members? Open it up to the public? Yeah, Mr. Nick.
have to,
Well, no.
but you're
I
welcome
was
to.
thinking as you were making your presentation, it's kind of interesting. When I was growing up.
Dave, talking with the mic.
Excuse me, Dave Mankin at 1174 Chaucer Drive, Court, excuse me. There were 4 people in my family, and it was a 2-bedroom apartment. And there were a number of people in that apartment with children. There was something like this, about 150 units. And I remember at the bus stop, there were probably, if I remember correctly, I would say there were probably about a dozen children waiting for the bus from that apartment. And it does have an impact. It does. And I'm going to say something else. I mean, you have about 150 plus units here. It's across from the university. I mean, there's a lot of, won't there be a lot of impact of traffic? Kids coming, I don't know what the attendance is of the university, but, people coming in probably at 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, the same thing, people going to work. I mean, this is a small area, and it's going to have, I think, an impact. You have a small business this is zoned for small business. Well, a small business, in my idea, what, 25 people? That's a big difference between 150 units and 25 people probably coming to work and such. And I just thought that would be a consideration. I'm sorry, I don't want to put the...
No, yeah, absolutely, this is public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Nankin.
You're welcome.
There's no further comments. Entertain a motion to... Susie, anyone?
No comments.
No comment. Thank you, thank you. Entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. I note that there's no resolution which is on the agenda, so I assume this will be considered at a future meeting.
As you know, Mr. Goldman, the next step is for seeker compliance.
Correct.
Have you received all of the letters from the DOT, DEC that were submitted to the town?
I don't recall. if we
DOT,
have.
Ontario County.
Well,
Yeah.
you attended the Ontario County Planning.
I
Board,
did.
right?
We-
So did
we-
you receive the minutes of that meeting?
Yes, I have received the Ontario County Planning.
So all the involved agencies signed off on the town board acting as legal. We did receive a number of letters from DOT, DEC, and the county planning board. And
Okay.
as well as the planning board, we already have a copy of that.
Okay.
With the recommendation.
And that's fine. I believe you probably have all of them.
You have not received
You have
any of
not
that?
received. So
So we'll get copies of
Okay.
those sent to you.
Okay.
So you have those, and then the next step will be for this board to go through the secret process.
Right.
Make a determination of environmental significance.
Right.
pursuant to secret.
And the town is a very, very structured way of dealing with that, so that you deal with the seeker as it relates to the rezoning alone and leave the seeker for the project itself, the nitty-gritty, if you will, with the planning board.
Yeah, you are correct that the PDD process is a 2-step process. This town board votes on whether it adopts a PDD law that rezones the property to the PDD structure.
Right.
The secret determination is on the passage of the law.
Right.
But the town board as lead agency has to not only consider the potential impacts associated with the passage of the law, but once that law is in place, what impacts would it generate?
Sure.
You are right, however, and the planning board is an involved agency as part of that process. But you are right that potentially at the site plan level, there may be an additional or further secret review done by the planning board
Right.
specific to the site plan application.
Right. We understand that. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next potential action is consideration for the approval of minutes from the December 16th town board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
This time, we'll ask the clerk to please read aloud the abstract of claims manifest number 1.
Manifest number 1 for 2025 in the amount of $1,085,053.80 has been reviewed by the Victor Town Board with the following accounts charged: general townwide, general outside village, highway townwide, the lighting districts of Fishers, Brookwood Meadows, High Point, Cobblestone, Coil Ridge, Rolling Meadows, Stone Lay, and Legacy at the Fairways, S&S Consolidated Sewer Fund, and Trust and Agency.
Thank you, Karen. We'll start with payment number 1 to American Rock Salt. Number 2, Aetna for retiree health care for the month of January. Integrated System, January hosting. Payment to Eastern Shore Insurance, 2025 town insurance. Marabito Energy. Mark, is this a new vendor for diesel?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. This is the fuel purchased in the month of December. Monroe County Water Authority, pump stations 5 and 11 service. Payment to NVP Healthcare, January Healthcare. New York State Comptroller for the court fees for the month of November. And New York State Retirement for the 2025, is it, Rich?
24 and 25, actually. Kind of hit both.
Okay. Payment to Ontario County Treasurer, to workers' comp for this calendar year. Precision Piping, this is for piping for the Whistle Stop project. And payment to RG&E for December townwide gas and electric. Total of the above-mentioned expenditures is $1,011,013.58. Total town expenditures minus the previous mentioned expenditures equals $74,040.22. Board members, any questions on manifest number 1? Hearing
So
none.
moved.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have no privilege of the floor granted this evening. Public comments and concerns. Susie, we'll start with you.
No comments.
Okay, no public comments. We have no reports from any of our department heads at this meeting. A few things I wanted to bring up. On Black Friday at Eastview Mall, there was, I don't know how the mall does it, but they estimated 90,000 estimated people walked the mall on this day with about 40,000 vehicles. Certainly there was some gridlock there that we'll be following up this Thursday. The meeting with the undersheriff and this public safety group that we meet with. Route 96 now has this new adaptive signal light controls on Route 96, and it had performance issues. The DOT only has 2 in this region, and so I know they certainly, as we found out on Black Friday, they have some bumps in the road, but specifically at the Eastview Mall and Turk Hill intersection, there is only a 13-second gap to allow vehicles to exit the mall. So you're only talking maybe 4, 5 vehicles at best. So that created the gridlock. So we've had conversations with the mall and the DOT. I've also sent an email to the regional director. It would be my desire to have the DOT sitting in on next fall's Christmas shopping planning meeting. I have already requested that both the Fishers Fire District and the Victor Farmington Volunteer Ambulance also be involved. The second annual menorah lighting took place last Monday. The weather conditions were certainly impacted the public turnout. I do want to mention that Councilwoman Ogra was the lighter of the middle branch. They're in Victor Hiking Trails. I also, in your mail slots recently, had a denial letter from RG&E regarding putting up a building which was close to property that they owned. Encore map of a parcel of land that will be available as well was in your basket or mail slot. And if you would, as mentioned at the org meeting, please check your calendars for the last week of February. Our town board meeting is scheduled for the 24th of February. Councilman Condon is out of town, and I have conflicts. I'll be at a conference, and I'm proposing Wednesday night, the 26th. Instead of 224 to 26, same time, and we would follow the same schedule, asking the clerk's office and all of our supporters to make sure we have everything in place by the normal, by Monday. So,
We can't have the meeting on that Monday? We've had meetings that are 3 before.
I'm sorry.
We can't have that meeting at all on that Monday, because we've had meetings that are 3 members before.
Oh, that didn't go so well, so we won't be doing no 3 more meetings, so supervisor will be there.
I guess I could do the 22nd.
Okay? So let me know if you cannot, otherwise we're going to move forward with the 26th.
That sounds good.
Okay. Okay, does any board member have any, it's new in the year, but any committee you care to report on as a follow-up to even last year? Okay, moving to the business section as mentioned earlier. Resolutions 1, 2, and 3 have been pulled from tonight's agenda.
Can I ask why we pulled these resolutions? Why did they get pulled?
Further research and conversation with the highway superintendent and myself and another board member. Moving to resolution number 4, authorization for the highway superintendent to purchase a portable solar-powered message board.
Moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Number 5, authorization for the purchase of a Kubota tractor, the front-end loader. There will be a 2016 Kubota declared as surplus.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And number 6, designation of the voting delegate for Association of Towns. I do plan on attending as,
So moved. Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain. I'd like to abstain.
From voting on that?
Yes.
Public comment?
Dave Nankin at 1174 Chaucer Court. I apologize before I say this. I have a question to ask you. And it doesn't have to be elaborate or anything, but I went to Google and I tried to research this myself, and I can't understand why builders want a PDD. I understand, after reading the articles in Google and such, that there are certain advantages and there's duplication and they can avoid that duplication and such. But it doesn't really go into any specifics exactly. And I was wondering if you could take 30 seconds just to explain an advantage of a PDD as opposed to not.
Well, it takes rezoning. It's
Right.
not zoning, so offering the rezoning under our model is the Plan Development District.
But it would be
Actually, it arguably is more beneficial for the municipality than the developer. Under the old way, you would just rezone the property a designation and then leave it up to the discretion of the planning board and the developer as to what it means to fill in that designation, meeting whatever variance or whatever setback height restrictions. By doing a PDD, it actually provides the town board more legislative authority to put in exactly what they will allow and not allow in that PDD, that district. And it also does simplify things for the planning board, because a site plan application before it must meet what is set forth in the PDD law. So it's actually a more effective way for town boards, cities, villages to legislatively set direct and more stringent parameters on developments that are, going to be built as a result of rezoning.
so there's really no advantage to the builder himself,
But
really.
it is advantageous to the builder too, because then they know the expectations. Once the law is set up, they know what the expectations are going forward.
I think, Mr. Nankin, as well, that might be something that's up for opinion of whomever you're talking to. I, for one, am not in favor of PDDs. I think we bend over backwards sometimes for PDDs and developers when we already have our set zoning. So it depends on every project, what's beneficial, what's not, and it depends on every board member, and every member of the public, too.
Thank you. That's all right.
Dave, in this instance, the planning board has already recommended with provisions that they move forward with the rezoning, and they left it open, like Frank said, so that we can revisit things such as height, number of units, all those things that they're there are subject to evaluation after it's approved, but they aren't going to bring the project to for any sort of evaluation of those anyway. So it's not that they're approving a quantity or an amount or a height or all those things, because they've already said in their recommendation that those things remain open for discussion if the rezoning is approved and they move forward with it. So it's basically taking some of the gray matter out of it just for the rezoning portion of it, and the approval of what it's going to be and how it's going to be and the look and all that stuff is down the road. All this is rezoning. It's nothing more. It's not approving a project moving forward. It's just taking the gray area out, whether they do their due diligence and it's rezoned and they look at a pot of money and say, can I afford it or can't I afford it? So it's sort of attempting to protect ourselves, and we have final approval here, and also taking a more direct route should they decide to go forward with the project.
The other thing to note is, if this town board passes a PDD and no development ever occurs, this board also has the legislative authority and discretion to repeal that.
Right.
The planning board did vote unanimously to approve the rezoning portion of it
Right,
with those exceptions, so.
right. It's still, it doesn't, I understand what you're saying, but it seems like it's more an advantage to the way you make it sound to the town than to the builder, but yet the builder is the one who initiates the PDD. But
Well, I
it's
think-
okay. I get it.
I think
No,
a
but-
lot of it too is, look at how things have changed here over the last 30 years, right? I mean, you've been here a long time, but even since you've been coming to the board meetings, as long as I've been on here, you show up all the time, and you look at the restrictiveness, I mean, I think there's a constant, when you look at zoning in general, I think that it's a constant balance between the rights of the landowner, the rights of the developer, the rights of the town. We're trying to do what we think is in the best interest for the town, without, stomping on individual rights. The moratorium on solar. I mean, this board is pretty committed that we don't want solar farms 100 feet from our house, those types of things. But at the same time, we're pretty restrictive with our R3, and R3 basically means 1 unit per 3 acres, 50% green space, you know, and how they'll cluster. So, I mean, you'll get a 75-acre parcel out behind me over there on Klein Road. And I think 24 houses are going to go in there. That's not, you know, is that a lot? Well, could be. I mean, they're going to be on septic. There's no sewer out there. So they have to be able to perk, and they'll perk. It's good soil out there. But I think it's a constant struggle. I think this PDD that's coming before us now is the fact that they've had this property for years and years, and there's not a lot of light industrial movement over there. They see a need, they see a use. These guys wouldn't build something if they didn't think they weren't going to fill it. I mean, go to the recycling center. I mean, you drive by what the village allowed for those. I mean, I drive by that and I think, oh my gosh, I can't believe, you know, 105 units is going to be sitting right here. But obviously, Krista, whoever owns that, building that, they're pretty sure they're going to fill that with 55 and over. Huh?
I hope so.
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't think they're building them to lose money.
I know.
But I think it's a constant struggle, but I agree with what I'm hearing up here. I think there's advantages. I think there's advantages to everybody. And I think the advantage to the board is that we can get a clear picture of what's going to happen. And I think that we can have a little bit more control over what's going to happen. And instead of having a blanket code, which I think is very hard because what might fit here doesn't necessarily fit there, I think it's part of the growing, changing, you know, people want green space. Okay, you want green space. You want to pay for it? I mean, look what Pittsford did with the big farms over there. They gave away millions of dollars in the 70s, right? They want this to be farming forever. Well, now those families have generationed out, and now they no longer want to farm over there. And
Some of it is reverted back.
and some of it has reverted back. So I think you do the best you can, but unless you're going to go out and pay, I mean, some towns, Pelmac or Palmyra or Macedon over there, they went out and they bought a big chunk of land and they wanted to have some green space, so we're going to buy it for parkland. Well, I think we do pretty well with our parkland and looking for that. I mean, we're looking for land for a highway facility. It's not going to come cheap. I mean, it's going to, you know, it's expensive real estate around here, and it continues to be. So we're blessed with that, right? It's not like we're down in the town of Arcadia who's going to pop a bottle of champagne because they put up a pole barn. You know, we're very blessed. 90,000 cars, 90,000 people walk the mall. Maybe Mike might have to pay for Little Ontario County Sheriff Road Patrol like CMAQ does on certain days, right? I mean, they could probably bring up some road patrol to help folks exit during peak hours up there. But that's all part of the benefit, and it's also part of the burden when you're trying to get through town and those things too, so. Not an easy.
One other question, I'm sorry. If you have a PDD, you still have to go by the rules and regulations that are on the books, though. Yes, so okay, that's
And that's what Frank was saying, as far as seeker, as far as, you know, I mean, they can't put something up that's going to be detrimental.
They still have to go through a site plan approval process. with the
seeker,
planning.
right, yeah.
It's just
And I
the
think-
zoning portion of it. That's what it is.
Councilman Dave hit it. By doing a PDD, the town board exercises a little more control over that process than if it didn't have the PDD.
Thank you for all the time. You're such nice people. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
No further comment. I need a motion to go into executive session for rule number 2, financial employment history leading to possible, I have appointment, but attendees would be the town board and the highway superintendent only. No action out of this meeting, we'll just adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm all set. I know Karen wants to ask you a question.
Did we answer your question?